Every now and then, something new rolls along that enhances our way of life. The Mudsmith Gauge Wheel was created by farmers for farmers to improve operations and to save you time and energy in the fields. Call or visit our website to see how we reinvented the wheel. Manufactured by Mudsmith, LLC.
Weed of the week is commonly known as dog fennel or mayweed chamomile.
Well, with this dog fennel or mayweed chamomile, it's a big problem as you start to get out into the Pacific Northwest. That's where I first learned of people having major problems with this particular weed. Fortunately, it's not all that difficult to control. We'll get to that in just a minute. Let's talk a little about identification first. One of the issues becomes it could be an annual. There are actually several chamomile species that could be perennials or even biennials. They can germinate in the spring, they can germinate in the fall.
Well, they germinate when there's moisture. And if you're getting some moisture in the fall, you're going to see some germination. And if you see some germination in the spring as well, wow, you did a great job in the fall controlling them, but now here you go again. You've got to do it a second time during that growing season. So it can be a challenge. But for me, the thing that I like about this particular weed is when something isn't working and growers across a wide region are not getting control, there has to be another answer. And we just have to turn back the clock a little bit to say, okay, what were we using 5 or 10 years ago that was getting good control? And in many cases in wheat, it's the SU type products.
So if you're seeing these white ray flowers out there and you've got all this dog fennel and you're having major issues, you gotta go back to something like the SUs, but you could use one of the newer products like Husky, for example, that contains Buctril.
Well, a lot of producers are using Wide Match. That's a pretty popular broadleaf product in wheat. And when it has a few holes or a few weeds that it's not great on, what are most guys doing? They're adding 2,4-D.
Wow.
And for me, you know, I look at it and say, okay, you can add 2,4-D and just try and beat things to death, but it also is just a little bit hard on the crop. And I don't like that. I don't like the potential for off-target movement. And for me, I look at those SUs as a great alternative. They're safe to use in wheat. They kill a wide variety of weeds, whether it's the mustard species or something like dog fennel. So it adds a lot of control, and they're really cheap.
Okay,
I like that.
So what Darren's getting at here is Wide Match is not a very good product. Husky
on
is
this wheat.
On
it's
this
a fantastic
wheat.
product.
Right. So this is one of the few holes that Wide Match has. That's why we would suggest you put a sulfonyl urea product with it. Something like Affinity from DuPont or Cheminova has the same thing in a generic version, and these products have come way down in price. I mean, you can literally buy some of these on the generic side or even from DuPont at probably half of what you used to pay or less.
When you can add something cheap to control some really tough weed like dog fennel, that's a great answer. I don't know how many farmers I've talked to and they say, man, I've got this huge problem. And I said, well, have you got an extra $1 or $2 in your program? Well, sure. Okay, well, let's wipe it out completely. That's a good deal. Now, the other key is you have to get out there timely. You can't let this stuff get big and then think you're going to go out and get good coverage, because dog fennel or mayweed chamomile has got a lot of growing points. And as you let that plant get bigger, it bushes out, and there's so many growing points that it's tough to carry a lethal dose to each one of those.
Yep, so what ends up happening is you'll have enough herbicide in to kill some of the top growing points, and as it works its way down, it just runs out of steam. You don't completely kill the weed, and it ends up coming back on you.
Well, that ends up being the major complaint with a lot of different products. Like, let's just even talk about Husky or Buctril. A lot of guys say, man, you know, I burned the tops off, but I just wasn't able to kill the whole thing. And you say, wait a minute, you burned the tops off. How big a weed are you talking about? Well, it was only 3 inches. Well, that doesn't look like 3 inches. You have to keep that in mind. So it may not be the product that you're using that's the problem. It could be the timing.
Or it could be the rate, because it's very common for people to cheat on the rate with both Husky and Buctril. Now, let's turn and change gears a little bit and talk from wheat, go over to pasture. If you've got this problem in your pasture, Tordon has come way down in price. It's literally half of what it was just 2 years ago. So you could go out there with Tordon for a little over $10 an acre with a full quart, and you'll not only wipe it out, you'll wipe it out for several years after that.
Well, you could use a product like Grazon as well. That'd be a Tordon 2,4-D combination, which is real common. Now, I talked about how that could be a little bit harsh on wheat from time to time if you have some 2,4-D in the mix with something. In pasture, it's really not that big a deal because you're using a super low rate, and frankly, it's not like we're trying to raise a seed crop there. We're just raising some grass. If you are concerned with that, you could go straight Tordon, but the cost is a little bit higher, and for that reason, a lot of guys choose to go with Grazon.
Wait, are you you talking about 2,4-D hurting pasture?
No, I'm just saying it's not a big concern like it would be in a wheat crop.
Well, yeah, I mean, even at a higher rate of 2,4-D in pasture, I'm not worried about that at all. But yeah, on the wheat crop, we really don't like seeing 2,4-D out there. Again,
yeah, you're talking about an annual grass compared to in pastures, you're talking about perennial grasses where it's not that big a concern for injury.
Yeah, well, once again, our weed of the week is dog fennel or mayweed chamomile. We've got a number of different options for control. They're fairly inexpensive. Just take advantage of them. You don't want this weed to escape on your farm.
Well, that's all the time we have for our weed of the week, but Iron Talk is coming up next.